When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, Jeff, Part 1. User, 6AdWorldXX. Posted, May 10th, 1998.
I want to say it started like nothing. That would be cleaner. The truth is, we were messing around behind the old tractor shed at Jeff's place, and he yelped and slapped the side of his neck like a horse swats a fly. He said something got him. That was it. Sun was dropping behind the hackberries, air thick, gnats in our eyes. We had spent the afternoon dragging scrap to the burn pile and drinking warm Mountain Dew, the kind that tastes like it had already been chewed. Jeff said he was fine. He always said that. He could step on a nail, bleed through his boot, and call it a scratch. I saw the spot that night under the porch light. A clean little puncture by the angle of his jaw, not far from where the neck meets the ear. The skin around it had gone pale and tight, and there was a red ring the size of a quarter. He said probably a spider. He said his Meemaw used to put a slice of onion on things like that, and it drew the bat out. He didn't put an onion, though. Pressed it with a rag and poured a capful of rubbing alcohol over it. He hissed, made a joke about tequila, and went on like nothing happened. By morning, the ring was bigger. The red bled outward like watercolor on a napkin. He came by my apartment to help me move a busted recliner, and when he took off his hat to wipe sweat, I saw the swelling. It looked like someone had slid a marble under his skin. He shrugged me off. He said he felt fine, only hot. He took 2 aspirin and used my phone to check his messages. Jeff worked odd jobs and left his beeper with his cousin during the week. No one had called. He asked if I still had the tape of Down on the Upside to dub. I handed him the cassette and said would go to urgent care. He said doctors were for people who enjoy paperwork. On the 3rd day, the center of the spot turned the wrong color. Gray, then green, then something like boiled chicken. The skin there didn't look like skin. It looked like a layer of wet paper. Jeff kept pawing at it and saying he could feel something in there, like a splinter. The area pulsed when he laughed. The red ring had spread down his neck and along his collarbone in a line, as if a finger had dragged paint under his skin. I went to the drugstore and bought antibiotic cream, gauze, and tape. He let me smear it once, then he peeled it off because it itched. He said it felt better, but he lied. He had this stubborn way of making the world obey him by refusing to acknowledge its existence. When the carburetor on his Ranger clogged, he kept driving until the engine coughed itself back to life. When his last girlfriend said she was leaving, he told her the door was sticky. She left anyway. 2 nights later, he called me at 1:12 in the morning. The ring sounded wrong, and when I picked up, the line buzzed like an insect light. Jeff whispered that the bite had popped. He said the relief was instant. He said the pressure was gone. He also said, in a smaller voice, that something came out. I drove over in my sleep pants and a NASCAR shirt I took from my brother, and I didn't even put on shoes. Jeff's trailer sat back off the country road past the ditch where mud swallows stayed all summer. The porch light was on and the front door was open. I smelled something sweet and rotten before I even stepped inside. The television played a hunting show with the sound off. The VCR clock blinked 12 because he never said it. Jeff was in the kitchen with his head tilted and a towel pressed to his neck. The towel looked like a murder. He grinned when he saw me. He said it was nothing, and he took the towel away to show me. The wound had split like a mouth. The edges softened and pulled back. There was a cavity inside where things gleamed. I leaned in and saw the gleam was not blood. It was wet and sticky in there, lined with a film that stretched and clung when he moved. Something white sat at the bottom of the hole, rice-shaped and clustered. When he breathed, the cluster shifted like seed on a plate when a fan turns on. I told him that was it, we're going. But he shook his head and put the towel back like a child puts a blanket over his head against the dark. He said he felt fine. He said the pressure was gone. He said I was making a federal case out of a bug bite. I did not sleep. He did. I sat on his couch, smelling the wound, listening to tiny sounds that came when he shifted in his sleep. They were not normal skin sounds. They were dry and soft together, a whisper like wind moving through thin thatch. At 4 in the morning, I turned on the kitchen light and looked at the towel. Little ovals dotted the terry cloth. They were the white of old milk, and they squished when I pressed a finger through one, the way an egg yolk gives and then runs between your knuckles. The next day, he wore a bandana around his neck like a country singer. The red line had crept across his chest. If I had drawn it with a marker, I would have run out of ink. He wore his jacket in the heat and laughed most of my sentences into the ground. We helped his cousin move a pool table, and he bent down wrong and the bandana slipped. The cousin gagged. Jeff tied it tight and said allergies. I told my boss I had a thing and left at noon. I drove to the county clinic. The waiting room smelled like floor wax, and the radio in the corner played Shania Twain, Love Gets Me Every Time, just over soft static. I told the nurse what I had seen. She said my friend needs to come in. I said he wouldn't, though. She said I could call EMS if he passed out, and I asked if she had seen anything like it. She said yes and no, and gave me a pamphlet about brown recluse bites that showed a black circle with a hole in the middle. The hole looked friendly compared to Jeff. I bought Benadryl and calamine. I bought a digital thermometer and a bottle of peroxide. I brought them to his door and banged until he let me in. He took the Benadryl to shut me up. He took the thermometer, looked at the numbers like it was a dare, and said he did not trust anything that beat. He was pale and shiny now. A fine dust clung to his shirt like pollen. By the end of the week, he had stopped answering his phone. If I drove over, he hollered that he was sleeping and I should come back later. Sometimes I heard the television. Sometimes I heard him moving through the trailer in a slow circle. Sometimes I heard nothing and left a note folded twice that said please. When he finally let me in, he kept the lights off and walked me to the kitchen. The air was damp and wrong. The wound had become something else. The cavity widened and dulled at the edges. The skin around it had taken on a surface like candle wax left in the sun. Threads crossed the hole, not hair, not lint, threads that were part of the inside. The white cluster had grown up the side like foam that set. There were more holes now, smaller ones around the big one, as if whatever had started in the center had built outposts. Those little holes flexed. And when he breathed, I saw something answer from within, like something pulling against a pocket. Still, Jeff pretended none of this was happening. He said he had built a new rack for his tapes and had showed me the screws he used, little brass ones. His hands shook when he held one up. When I asked if he was eating, he said he could not taste anything that was not sweet. His cabinets were full of honey and jelly and gas station pies. At the bottom of the trash was a Ziploc full of the white shapes from the towel. He had tied the bag, but the seam split and the shapes leaked out in a wet line. There are smells that change your idea of the world, and the wound had that smell. It was sickly and green, like fruit that had gotten warm and then gone beyond warm into something that belongs to the ground. I told him again we had to go. He laughed without a sound and asked if I had brought my camcorder. He wanted to see what it looked like from the back. I did not.
Subject, Rebecca Alden. User, WearyDriveR18. Posted, April 19, 1997.
I'm not posting this for sympathy. Lord knows I've had enough of that. I just need somewhere to say it all. Somewhere that doesn't start every reply with, "You're a hero." Because I'm not. You might know me. Not by name, maybe, but by face. I was the guy on the news last month. The man who found the missing woman from Haynesville. Yeah, that was me. The one who pulled over just after midnight on County Road 16, saw a body in the ditch, and dialed 911 like a good citizen. Only that wasn't a body. Not exactly. She was collapsed in a crumpled pile of dirt and blood and tangled limbs. At first, I thought she'd been hit by a car. Her legs were twisted and one arm was bent under her like it didn't belong to her at all. Her clothes were shredded and caked in mud. Her skin was scratched raw. Her hair, it looked like something had pulled her through the woods backward. She looked up at me. "Is it over?" she asked, voice so dry it barely came out. I wrapped her in an old blanket I kept in the trunk and called for help. She didn't say another word on the drive, just stared out the windshield, blinking slow and breathing like each inhale had been rehearsed. They took her to the hospital, and I followed the ambulance in silence. That night changed everything. She was Rebecca Alden, 25 years old, had gone missing from Haynesville back in July. You remember the story, I'm sure. The college grad who vanished while jogging, left her Walkman behind. Her family did the whole circuit. Local news, prayer vigils, yellow ribbons tied to fences, a spot on Dateline. I even remember seeing a milk carton with her face on it at the Shell station in Quincy. They called her the missing woman from Haynesville. Until I found her. The next few days were a blur. Press, interviews, even a radio call-in show on WCKR where people thanked me and cried on air. Folks sent me free meals. A woman mailed me a Bible with a handwritten note that said, "God used you as his tool." Yeah, some tool. But the thing is, I knew it in my bones the second I got back in the car with her that whatever I picked up that night, it wasn't Rebecca Alden, or at least not anymore. The breathing gave it away first. You ever hear someone breathe wrong? Like off rhythm. It wasn't gasping or struggling like someone in pain. It was slow, steady, too steady, like she was counting each breath and timing it for effect. I drove 15 miles to the nearest hospital with her sitting next to me, and I swear to you, it felt like I was riding with something trying to remember how to be human. At one point, it turned her head, smiled at me real soft, and whispered, "You're a kind man." But the smile didn't reach her eyes. Hell, I'm not sure her eyes even blinked. I almost turned around, almost stopped and called the police again, but I didn't. I kept driving because I was scared, not of her necessarily, more of what she might really be. They said later she was malnourished, disoriented, that she must have escaped from somewhere, maybe kept underground, maybe tied up in the woods, but she had no rope burns, no broken bones, no bugs in her hair. Her vitals were stable. Her blood work came back clean. They ran every test they could think of, couldn't find a single reason why she was still alive after nearly 3 months missing, except she was. Her parents wept when they saw her. Her brother nearly passed out. I stood in the corner while they clung to her, thanking God and fate and destiny. Nobody noticed that her fingers didn't quite curl right when she hugged them back. That first night, I tried to sleep, tried like hell, but something kept waking me. It was a whisper, not from the hallway, not from the street. It was from inside my apartment, and it was her voice. Just faint enough that I couldn't make out the words, always just beneath hearing like radio static under a preacher's sermon. I unplugged everything, the TV, the phone, the alarm clock. Still, I heard it, and then I started seeing her. Not in person, not yet, but reflections. Windows, in my bathroom mirror, in the damn toaster once, always standing still and always staring. I thought maybe I was losing it, but it just got worse. I was standing in line at McDonald's one afternoon when the woman behind the counter squinted and asked, "Hey, aren't you the guy who found the missing girl?" I nodded and she smiled. "She's standing behind you." I turned, but no one was there. The girl just looked confused. I thought I saw her. She was right there, I swear. I didn't get my fries. I just walked the fuck out. A few days later, my boss told me someone had called the office asking for me, said it was Rebecca. But when I called the number back, it didn't exist. I even ran it through the yellow pages, but nothing. The night after that, I woke up to find my bedroom window wide open. I never opened that window, not even in summer, and sitting on the sill was a dead pigeon. Not mangled, just dead. Eyes still open, neck bent backward. I've had 3 nosebleeds in the last week. I keep finding my keys in places I didn't leave them. My car radio won't tune to anything but static until I turn it off and back on again. And when I do, I hear breathing. The same breathing I heard that night in the car. She's following me, I know it. Not walking behind me like in some movie, but tethered, tied to me like I brought her back and now she's trying to figure out how to stay. I don't think she knows everything yet, but she's learning, she's watching, and the world is buying the lie. Rebecca Alden is back in Haynesville doing interviews, speaking at schools, telling half-truths about darkness and being lost and how love brought her home. People cry when she talks, but I want to scream when I hear her voice because whatever that thing is, it is not Rebecca. Maybe it never was. Maybe it wore her like a mask the moment she stepped off whatever black plane of existence she came from. Maybe Rebecca died 3 months ago in a way none of us can even understand, and something else crawled out in her place. I've stopped checking the news, not because I don't care, but because I do, because I'm waiting for the headlines to change, waiting for the first fire, the first disappearance, the first act of violence that no one can explain, but everyone feels it in their bones. And when it happens, they'll show her face on the news again. I know it. The woman from Haynesville, and they'll ask the same question they asked back in July. Where is Rebecca Alden?
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.